All right, so the first thing to do is you start out front. It always starts from the front, and we're looking at the bus and we don't see any suspension issues where it's leaning left or right. Don't see any big puddles of fluid underneath of it, okay? Because we do have some the steering gearbox there that could be leaking fluid. There's also the heater core and all that's up there could be leaking, but we don't see any sign of any puddles underneath there. So we'll go up and we'll look at our clearance lights, 3 clearance lights, our turn signals and 4-way flashers, and our headlights, high and low beam. They're all mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, or loose. They're the proper color, and there's no moisture inside the headlights. From here, we can see our bumpers securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's the proper height off the ground. We'll walk in close, and we'll look at our windshield. Our windshield seems to be mounted properly. It's not cracked or damaged in any way. There's no illegal stickers anywhere on the windshield. Our windshield wiper is mounted properly. It's not cracked or damaged. And the windshield blade was sitting flat against the windshield, and it seems to be in good condition. And we'll check its operation once we sit inside. We have our mirrors. They're mounted properly. They're not cracked or damaged in any way. They're not fogged over or anything, and we'll check their adjustment once we have a seat inside. So that's the front of the bus. So then we'll come around to this side. Hold on just a second. So once we get to here, we'll just look down the side of the bus, and we got our side marker lights. They're all mounted properly. They're not cracked or damaged in any way, and they're the proper color. Amber in the front, red in the back. We've got our right side turn signal and 4-way flasher. It's mounted properly, not cracked or damaged. We have our reflectors and reflective tape down the sides. They're in good condition. They're not cracked or damaged. And all the windows and all the stuff down the side seem to be in good condition. So now we'll start here at this axle. So if you come in here and look inside here, you'll see that you have 3 leaf springs, and you got a spring hanger in the front, spring hanger in the back, 2 U-bolts, and a shock. That's your suspension. So what you see is your spring hangers, front and rear, are mounted properly. They're not cracked or damaged in any way. Your leaf springs are mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, or shifted out of place. They're securely fastened to the axle with 2 U-bolts. The U-bolts are mounted properly. They're not cracked or bent or broken. And then you have your shock absorber. It's mounted at the top and the bottom properly. It's not cracked or damaged or leaking any oil out of the shock absorber. So that's what I mean by, if you look in there, you can see the stuff, and you just got to talk about what you're seeing. Then we'll start with the brakes. First thing we have is our brake line, our air line right here. The air line's coming over across to the brake chamber. It's secured properly on both ends. It's no cuts, gouges, bulges, or chafing, no air leaks. Our brake chamber is there. It's mounted properly. It's not cracked, damaged, or loose, or leaking any air. The 2 halves of the brake chamber are held together with a C-clamp, and it's nice and tight. And then you have a push rod coming out of the brake chamber and a slack adjuster. They're both mounted properly, and you can't pull the push rod out more than 1 inch. Okay. Then we look out here, and we'll just do our drum right there and our brake pads. They're both mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, or loose, or contaminated with any oil. And the pads are not worn dangerously thin. Okay? So that's the brakes. Brakes, you have the air line or air hose, brake chamber, C-clamp, push rod, slack adjuster, pads, and drum. Okay? Now the tire is a virgin tire, which means it's not a recap. Has at least 4 30-seconds tread on it. It's got even tread wear. There's no cuts, gouges, or bulges on the sidewalls. We come down here and find the valve stem. The valve stem's nice and straight. It's not cracked or bent in any way. It does have a cap on it, and it's not leaking. We take a tire pressure gauge and make sure that we're up to the manufacturer's specifications as far as air pressure. We used to say 110 psi or whatever it might be, but because different manufacturers have different psis now, they want you to say that, okay? So you take your tire pressure gauge and check it and make sure you're up to manufacturer specifications. We go to the rim. The rim's got a good bead around it, no sign of any bends or dents or anything like that, no leaks, no illegal welds anywhere, no cracks in between the lug holes. We got all our lugs are present. They're all mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, loose, or anything like that, or missing. And there's no dust trails that show one might be loose. And our wheel hub here, it's all securely fastened. All the bolts are there. No sign of any leaks. And it's filled to manufacturer specifications. So that's all there. So that's all that front axle. So now we come here. We got our fuel tank. It's mounted properly. It's not cracked, damaged, loose, or leaking any fuel. All the lines are securely fastened and they're not leaking also. And it has a cap securely fastened on it. All right, now we'll do the under part. Let's open this up. All right, so from right here, we can check the luggage compartment underneath there. Everything looks good. No sign of any big holes or rust spots or anything like that. Everything seems to be in good condition. We can see our floor from the bottom, and we don't see any sign of holes or any weak spots up in the floor above. We look right here, we see our frame and our cross members. They're all mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, loose, or bent, or broken in any way, okay? And that's all there is in there. If that thing slides up there, sometimes it don't want to come off, so all you gotta do is just pull the plastic back, okay? All right. So now we got an invisible thing here we gotta always remember. When you get here, we have 2 air tanks, okay? Air tanks are mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, loose, or leaking any air. You have air lines that go up to the front brakes. They're mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, loose, or no chafing or bulging or anything in the air lines, and they're not leaky. So when we come here, as far as just like up there, we always start with suspension. We have a big spring hanger.
You said spring?
A big spring hanger and a spring arm, okay? And the spring arm comes back here and it's secured to the axle with 2 U-bolts. And then you have an airbag. You can just barely see it right here behind that back tire on this side, but there's an airbag. So you got a spring hanger, a spring arm, U-bolts, and an airbag. All right? Where you had a shock up there, you got an airbag back here. They're all mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, or loose, or leaking any air. They're all in good condition. Now, as far as the brakes go, we check the brakes back here the same exact way we check the brakes up there. We don't have to repeat them, okay? Now the tires back here, you can have recaps, have to be a minimum of 2 30-seconds, okay? Even tread wear on both tires. Both tires have no cuts, gouges, or bulges on the sidewalls, inside or out. Both tires have nice straight valve stems that aren't cracked, bent, or broken, or not leaking any air. We take a tire pressure gauge and make sure both tires are up to the manufacturer's specifications. We reach inside to make sure there's no debris or foreign objects in between the 2 tires, and that the rims are nice and flush together. There's no gap in between the new rims, and the 2 tires aren't touching. Now we come out here, we look at the rims. There's no dents, bends, or cracks, or bumps, no leaks, no illegal welds, no cracks in between the lug holes. All our lug nuts are nice and tight. None of them are loose or missing, or no sign of any loose ones. We have a wheel hub. It's mounted properly. It's not cracked, damaged, or loose, or leaking any oil out of it. Then we come here, we have our mud flap. It's mounted properly, it's not cracked, damaged, loose, and it's proper height off the ground. So we come back here to the back, and it's just like up front, are securely fastened, and there's no sign of any leaks on any of the hoses. We have our power steering reservoir. It's mounted properly, it's not cracked, damaged, loose, or leaking any fluids. All the hoses coming in and out of it are securely fastened, and none of them are leaking. We take the dipstick out, wipe it off, put it back in to make sure it's at normal operating levels. The transmission and the oil, we do the same thing. Pull the dipsticks out, wipe them off, stick them back in, and pull them back out to make sure they're at normal operating levels. You don't have to do it that day, you'd have to just tell them, just like I'm doing here, how you do it. So then we come here, we have our power steering pump. I'm sorry, well, we do. We have our compressor and our power steering pump, okay? They're both right here. They're both gear driven. They're both mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, or loose in any way, and there's no sign of any leaks on either one, okay? Saying they're gear driven is very important, okay? So then we come across here, and we have our water pump. It's mounted properly. It's not cracked, damaged, loose, or leaking any fluids. It's belt driven. We come up here, we have our alternator. It's mounted properly. It's not cracked, damaged, loose, and all the wires are connected properly, nice and tight. No frayed wires, corroded wires. It's belt driven also. Both the alternator and the water pump are driven by the serpentine belt. You can't pull it more than 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, and it's no excess wear, cuts, or damage to it at all. Two more things. One's the exhaust right there. It comes out off the engine. The exhaust is mounted properly. It's not cracked, damaged, loose, or show any signs of soot where it might be leaking. And the last thing is, you can barely see it right down through there, but there's a little short drive shaft. It's mounted properly. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's got universal joints on both ends, and they're free of debris. All right, so that's all in here. That drive shaft, like I said, you can just barely see it if you look right over top of that exhaust down to there. You can just barely see it down in there.
Okay, and we need to mention that.
Yeah, that's why we throw it in. That's the last thing, is we're coming right to left, and it's after you do the exhaust, you can see it down there. That's why I go ahead and do it at this point. And now we're ready to close. All right. So now we come over here. We have our battery. We open up our battery door, make sure our batteries are mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, or loose, or shifting around. No sign of any leaks or corrosion or any frayed wires or anything like that. It's all in good condition. All right. We don't have to do anything here because we did it all over there. We come here, we have our electrical panel. We open it up, and we don't see any frayed wires or corroded wires or anything like that. All our fuses are in good condition. They're all set. I always run my fingers down through them because these got little breakers, like GFI breakers, where they'll pop out. So I always make sure they're all popped in. This particular yellow one right here, if it pops out, your marker lights won't work. Okay, so that's why I always run it across there before she goes through. Just make sure they're all set in there. It's got a good seal around it. No sign of any water issues or leaks or anything like that. And we do have extra fuses inside. Now more invisible stuff is your steering component. So you have a steering column that comes down. It's mounted properly. It's not cracked, damaged, or loose. The CV joints on either end are in good condition and no excess of wear or debris in them. They come down to the steering gearbox, which is mounted properly. It's a rod. Those are all mounted properly. They're not cracked, damaged, or loose, and they're all secured with castle nuts and Carter keys. Okay? And so that's all the outside. Our door seems to open properly. The hinges seem to be in good conditions. Got a good seal around it. We'll grab our handrails, give them a good shake, make sure they're in good condition, not loose or anything. We'll step up on the steps, looking for any weak spots. Come all the way to the top. Go ahead on the back. once you get here, you can turn the window mirror down a little bit. I pulled a muscle on my shoulder. I can't hardly turn that. And inside here, you got your fire extinguisher. It's securely mounted, fully charged, and your 3 triangles. First aid kit, body fluid cleanup kit, extra fuses. All right. And if you want it, right there's the key to get down there and check your windshield washer fluid, but that's not that big a deal. All right. When you grab this mirror to move it or anything, always do it from the middle, because that's how it got broke. Somebody tried to do it from the outside. All right, so now we're ready to go to the back. When we go to the back, we're checking the seats, we're checking the bottoms, make sure they're secured, make sure the tops are secured. Just do a few of them as you come down through here. When you get back to the door, or when you open it, you open your window and so it closes properly, your emergency exit. We don't have to open up anymore. Don't worry about that one. That one there is hard to open. So, but you just work your way all the way to the back, checking all the seats all the way to the back. And then once you get back here, we're gonna start checking the floors. We're coming back looking for weak spots, okay? As we come along, we'll check our emergency exits on the top. It's in the latch position and it's secure, got a good seal around it. So we just work our way, like I said, stepping in, looking for any kind of weak spots, give it a little bounce all the way up. And once we get up here to this one, we'll check the latch and then make sure it's got a good seal. Work our way all the way back up here to the front. Go ahead and close that. Check our seat, make sure our seat's nice and tight. Have a seat. First thing. Oh, come on, arm. Our seatbelt's not cut or torn or anything like that. It seems to be in good order. We look at our mirrors. Our mirrors are properly adjusted for us, even that one up there. And so now we're ready to do a safe start. So put our foot on the brake. Start it up. All right, so first thing we do is turn our lights on. See our door lights working. So we close the door. And it's still on. That's all right, they got that messed up too. Over here on this side, you might want to kind of shine your light down in here a little bit, or your camera. But you got your lights going back through there. There's 1, 2, 3 lights, okay? So the first one, no, but the next 3. So they all work, so you turn them back off as you go through. And then we got all our fans on back here. All right, these 3 fans here are all those right there. We don't have to worry about it, but it's, if you're at the door button, 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, then we check our defrost. It's working properly. All right, our battery is charging at 100 and something percent. We come over here, our oil pressure is at normal operating pressure. Our water temperature is at normal operating temperature. Our RPM gauge will hit our high idle and it's operating properly. We come over here, fuel tank says it got about 3/4 of a tank. It seems to be operating properly, and our air gauges are building up, and we're waiting for the governor to kick in between 120 and 140. There it is. Whenever you hear the sneeze, you got to say that 120. Sometime during this inspection you have to say that. So this is a good time, or just anywhere, make sure you tell it between 120 and 140 is when the governor kicks in. All right, so that's all our gauges and stuff. So now we'll come over here and our lights are on. So we check all our indicators. There, we're just checking inside here. So there's our right side, left side, 4-way flashers. High beams are on, back to low beam. All right, windshield wipers, windshield washers. All right, our steering wheel can have more than 2 inches of play in a 20-inch steering wheel. And then our Okay, so that's everything we can check in here. So now we're ready to do the air brake test. So first thing we do, shut the bus off. That beeping's that door switch, so click it up one notch. And the door's gonna open, but don't worry about that. All right, we can go ahead and turn our lights off. Next thing we do is release our brake. And we should stop here in just a second. When you're at your testing place, she sits down in a little galley, so you won't have to worry about chalking or nothing. This usually sits here. All right. So now we're ready to do the air brakes. So first thing we do, turn the key on. Your ABS light's right there. It comes on and goes back off. Okay, you gotta say that. And now you're gonna tell her to do it just like I'm doing. So the first test I'm gonna do is called the applied test, or just test number 1. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my foot on the brake pedal and I'm gonna hold it down for 1 minute. And during that time, I can't lose more than 3 PSI. And would you time me, please, and tell me when to go? So when she says go, you put your foot on the brake pedal and hold it till she says, okay, times that's long enough. So, and it didn't drop more than 3 PSI, that's a good test. Test number 2 is the low air warning test. That's why we gotta have our key on, okay? So we're gonna pump our brakes till the low air warning buzzer comes on. And it has to come on before 55 PSI. Get it come on good there. See, it comes on a little early, but it comes on plenty. All right, so that's a good test also. Now the final test is the parking brake test. We're going to continue to pump the brakes down until the parking brake sets, and that has to happen between 20 and 45 PSI. Okay, so we're going to pump it. And there it come out, and if you look at that one, it came out pretty good, so that's a good test too. It comes out a little bit early, but we're not worried about that. That's a good test, okay? So now we're ready to do a safe start. So we put our foot on the brake. All right. Throw it on high idle. And it'll build the air pressure up. You can go ahead and close your door back. And that's it pretty much. You go ahead and stop it. The only other thing left is a tug test, but that don't have anything to do with the door. We check the door, make sure it's got good hinges, got a good seal around it, all the glass is in good condition. We come up here to our handrails, shake our handrails, make sure they're securely mounted, stick up on our step, give them a little bounce, make sure there's no weak spots, and they have the non-slip tread on them. Come all the way up to the top. We'll pull this down just a little bit, open this up. We got our fire extinguisher and 4-way flashers in here, extra fuses. Our fire extinguisher is fully charged and mounted, and we have 3 triangles. We also have a first aid kit and a body fluid cleanup kit, but they're not really required on a tour bus. All right, so we pull that back up, turn around here. As we go to the back, we're going to be reaching down, pulling up on the seats, making sure they're not loose. Just work our way all the way back, check all the seats. You don't have to do them all. Once you do a few of them, you just say you check all the seats the same way. We come back here, check emergency exit, open it up, opens fine, closes fine. It is marked emergency exit as required. So we work our way all the way to the back, checking seats. When we get all the way back here and we're sure they're all mounted properly, then we turn around. We start looking for weak spots in the floors. When we come to this emergency exit, we check and make sure it's got a good seal around it and it's in the latch position. We keep working our way forward, making sure there's no loose or weak spots in the floor. We check this emergency exit in the roof here, the same way we check that one back there. And then once we get all the way up here to the top front again, that's all right. We shake our seat, make sure it's securely mounted. Have a seat in here. You want to come in, Eric, or you just gonna hang out?
Nope. I was just trying to stay out of your way.
Oh, you're all right. First thing we do is pull the seat belt out, make sure it's not cut or torn or any way. Make sure it latches. Give it a good pull. Make sure it unlatches so it's in good working order. First thing we'll do then is look out the window and make sure our mirrors are mounted properly for us. And then we're gonna start the bus with a safe start. Put our foot on the brake. Start up the bus. Close the door. All right. So first thing we're gonna check. Turn my lights on. We're gonna come over here. We're gonna check our lights in the back. So it's one right there, one right there in the back, and then the very back one. So there's 3 lights. This first one is not. The one with look like a cigarette lighter is not. It says COMP. We don't touch it. But that one, that one, that one, turn them on and off. And then we got all our heaters, passenger heaters. I'm gonna turn all this down so we can hear. All right, so we turn them on. You can hear all your heaters come on. All right, then we'll go over here and check our defrost. It's working properly. Come up here and check our battery. It seems to be charging. It's in the green. We'll come over here and check our water temperature. It's coming up to normal operating temperature. We'll check our oil pressure. It's coming up to normal operating pressure, PSI. We're gonna check our tachometer. We'll hit our high idle. And it seems to be raised up a little bit, so our tachometer seems to be working. Our air pressure, our fuel gauge says we're at just above a half a tank, so we're assuming it's working. And our air pressure is building up to between 120 and 140 where our governor will kick in. We come over here, I'm gonna check my light indicators. Drop that down just a little bit. I'm gonna check my right turn, left turn, four-way flashers. Now look right here for my high beam. Came on, goes back off. Got my windshield wipers on and off. Windshield washers on, okay, they're working. I got a 20-inch steering wheel with no more than 2 inches of play in it, and I got my horn. So that's all the inside, okay? So what I'm gonna do next, give it just a second, make sure my air pressure's built up all the way. There it is, okay? So we heard the sneeze, so we know our governor kicked in between 120 and 190. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn my lights off and shut the bus off. That's just that door over there. For some reason they got it messed up. So, and we're gonna release our brakes. All right. So now we're ready to start the air brake part. So first thing we're gonna do is turn the key on. Our ABS light comes on and goes off. Now we're gonna do an applied test, or test number 1. I'm gonna put my foot on the brake for 1 minute, and during that time I shouldn't lose more than 3 PSI. And I need you to time me, please. Tell me when to go. She tells you to go, put your foot on the brake and hold it down for 1 minute, or until she tells you to stop. Didn't lose more than 3 PSI, that's a good test. Second test is the low air warning test. What I'm gonna do is pump the brakes until the low air warning buzzer comes on, and it has to come on before 55 PSI. On. All right, the final test is the parking brake test, where I'm going to continue to pump the brakes down, and the parking brake should set between 20 and 45 PSI. And there it came out. That's a good test. So now we'll do a safe start. Kick the high idle on, and now we'll just wait till the air pressure builds back up to 120 to 140, and then we'll be ready to do the tug test and the service brake test. But that's the end of it.